Is there somebody that you have ever come across who actually personifies that role? A superhero, trusted strategic advisor, and I'm saying no, okay? If that has never happened, I want you to make that person up. What would that person look like? How would they behave? Think about some of the characteristics about this fictitious, if not a real person. If you have a real person or more than one, you're already in a very good shape, because then you can actually emulate their behaviors, because we learn a lot by watching. So as we walk through the model that I have for becoming a strategic advisor, think about whether this person meets those criteria or not and how they actually operationalize it. The framework that I refer to, it's called PRO. So PRO, strategic advisor, referring to a powerful problem solver, somebody who is reliable and resourceful, and this person is an organizational system thinker. How did I come up with this? Well, it was a mishmash of 15 years of trial and error, lots of amazing guidance for wonderful mentors, coaches that I've hired as professional coaches every time I made a transition, and from tons of books. So because I'm a part academic, there's a lot of research that I am constantly consuming about how can we be a better and more effective partner to the leaders we work with. And as Sandra mentioned in my intro, my primary work is as a change strategist. So anyone tried to implement or get their idea across in the organization? How can you do that if you are not welcome to actually have a voice? And how can you do that if you are not consistently given a chance? So for me, my success as a strategist depends on whether leaders welcome me to the table or not. So what I looked at was systematically, what are some things we can do? And that's what I want to share with you for the rest of the hour. What are 3 categories of things you can do that should enable you to be much more impactful and influential? So we'll start with power. What do you think it means to be powerful? To have influence. That's amazing. Usually we talk about power as the ability or the capacity to have influence. So the truth is, all of you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to exercise power, but unless you actually use influence tactics, other people will not give you power. So there is a difference. Think about people that have power. How does anybody get power in the organization? Position. The most popular is the legitimate power. Yes. So anybody with a title? Respect. Oh, my favorite. It's called the referent power. And why somebody is respected could be for multiple reasons. You are just somebody who carries yourself really well. You are consistent, you are kind, you are amazing in delivering amazing quality products. All of those things, you're considerate, may gain you respect. What else? Come on, we're more powerful. Authoritative. So somebody who is able to either share rewards for when you do something good for them, they are going to reciprocate, or they can withhold something that you really care about. And unfortunately, the stereotypic HR, the role that we have in monitoring and maintaining the rules and regulations, puts us in that category of reward and coercive power. Huge sources. Not ideal, because that is not welcomed, but source of power. Anything else that gives you power? Trusted. So the likability or respect, that absolutely creates more trust. We're at a conference. So knowledge and understanding the business. People who have information first, who have correct information, who have information that is relevant to business, who have information about what's happening within the organization, and who have information about what's happening in the industry outside of my organization are vital and sought out because they prove themselves to be relevant. So information is a huge source of power. What else? Sorry? Confidence. Confidence comes from your successes. Who said that? Thank you. So the more successful, so the common narrative is you've got to be successful or you have to be very confident to be a strategic advisor. Truth is, you start proving yourself as a value-add partner, and those successes build up your confidence and reputation that set you up as that strategic advisor. So the few things that we haven't mentioned is the network. Your network is your net worth, which is a very popular way of saying these people are the sources of information, of influence, connectivity, so many ways that they give you advantage. And the one thing you're doing at this professional development conference is building your expert power. You are an expert in HR. You're an expert in a specific field within HR. Or you may be like many other HR professionals in your organization, but you have additional expertise that actually sets you apart. So we seek out and give respect and power to people that treat themselves, consider themselves as experts. So all of those things come together to make you very powerful. Are you using absolutely every single source on a daily basis? Is there one that you use more than others? And my last, this is not rhetorical, but you can shout it out. Which is one power that if you were to apply that immediately, starting today, you can see that there may be a potential for a shift in your perception of who you are and what value you bring to the table? I'll take any takers. We're still in the morning. Reward power. Network, yes. Expert power. These are things your skills developing at this conference. And we'll talk about how do you take that forward and actually create influence with it. So after you have cultivated your multiple sources of power, not just thinking from your position or your title, now we're looking at how can I exert that as an influence. That's where tactics come in. How do you convince anybody to do anything? At least in the adult world. So we're not saying just because I said it so, you have to do it. But what is the most popular way we get people to hear? Sorry? Reward, yes, that actually is a reinforcing behavior, absolutely. But yes, we give them a rationale. We give them a reason, yes. So as adults, it's expected, and your employees also expect that from HR and the rest of the organization, that when you bring out a new policy, when you announce a new change, you can give them a compelling reason of why that must be a good idea. All the disruption and the transition that people have to go through is absolutely going to be good for the organization and for the people that actually will be part of the organization. So the amazing part about that rationale, or what we call persuasion, it works really well if you can frame it a few ways. Can you establish some similarity with a person? Can you first establish a rapport? Can you identify things they have done in the past, they said yes to, that were similar to the ask you're making today? Can you frame it in a way that helps with loss aversion? So psychologically, we prefer to not lose something than gain something. So for example, walking down the hallway, I lost 10 bucks. I'm going to be so much more upset than if I found 10 bucks. So can you frame your message in the way that articulates what will be lost if we don't act on the advice or the recommendation? So there are many, many other ways that you can actually influence people. Any other thoughts about, besides the ones we talked about? You give them a rationale. You give them a reward. You can ingratiate, which sounds really negative. The common vernacular would be sucking up to somebody in power. That sounds terrible. But the idea that if you can create relatability and you can actually truly find something that you admire, all of a sudden the gates are open and people are much more willing to hear you out because the threat has been reduced. So figuring out how best can you relate to a person, because the amazing thing about power is no person, organization, or culture has power. Power is within a context. You have power within an organization. So the best influencers are those that actually understand their audience. I may not care about the rewards you give me, but I really care about the respect you show and the acknowledgement you make when you're sharing what we did as a team. Are you aware of what the preferred methods of acknowledgement are for your team? How do they actually do things? So, and then you pivot accordingly. That becomes a differentiator. And once you do those two things, one thing that still remains is you've got to take initiative. So very often, one of the most common things, every employee up to the CEO, what did they say when you asked them, how are you? Busy. It's a badge of honor. Everybody is busy. So how do you differentiate yourself is, are you taking initiative to actually identify patterns, something that is important and happening in the organization that others have not noticed? Are you the one who's going to take initiative to figure out a new solution to a problem? Are you going to take the initiative to look at the problem from a different perspective? Can you, when I say initiative takers, can you think about people in your organization that are proactive? And if you really had a role model, a superhero strategic partner, does that person take initiative? So taking initiative takes a lot of effort, but you can do it systematically if you put that in your calendar. So you actually dedicate time to taking initiative. These three things together, when you actually are exercising multiple sources of power, not just one, and then using your influence tactics to operationalize that power, and ultimately proactively helping your leaders solve their problems rather than them reaching out to you. It actually sometimes is very comforting because everybody is busy. You have a portfolio with, let's say, 50 or 40, which is not even cool, managers or directors, and you barely are taking care of all the fires. It becomes easy to slip and check on somebody who's doing really well. So if you have a systematic approach of reaching out to see how are things going and how you can add value, that makes you a trusted strategic partner because you actually care about my business and performance. Does that make sense? Okay. So the reliability and resourcefulness, typical as the word in the dictionary would explain, consistency leads to reliability. But consistently poor performance does not lead to reliability. That's why quality is very, very important. So when you're making recommendations, when you're working with a leader, have you done your due diligence before you make your recommendations? That quality will differentiate you from other people the leaders may be working with. And also, if your work is amazing in quality, they're actually going to use that work when they are raising up the issue with their seniors. So now you have reduced their workload by creating ease. And partners that create ease for other business leaders, they always get repeat business. And that is true for entrepreneurs, that's true for intrapreneurs. Anybody here who's an entrepreneur, or everybody is with an organization? Everybody's with an organization? Okay, one. The model actually works both ways. So I only decided to go out on my own 2 years ago. And before that, I started off as an operations manager, if we really go back to the first professional job. Worked through many consulting jobs. And my last job before I decided to leave was as a director of organizational development and change for St. Joseph's Hospital in Toronto. And what I realized is that if I can create ease with quality, consistent work for whoever I'm working with, the probability that they call up on or make sure that I'm the point person on really value-add projects is much greater as compared to my peers. So it seems very simple that, of course, I do quality work and I do it consistently. Sometimes you also have to manage up, where you go through the process of showing that their input was accounted for in shaping the final product. So if you just listen to them once, you have one consulting meeting, and then you draft up a solution, they will not necessarily feel any ownership on that. So keeping them part of the process without making it cumbersome is golden. That's what we're talking about there. Resourcefulness, and I really don't like the word network because it dehumanizes the whole point of quality relationships. But because that's the popular vernacular, what I mean is making sure that you have a rich network and diverse network. What would that mean, having a very solid network? What type of people are you connected with? These would be people that you have very strong ties with and very weak ties with. So the best networks are not just where you have solid relationships. You have solid relationships and tons of weak relationships that you consistently keep in touch with. What do I mean by that? Before I became an entrepreneur, I had approximately, I think, 2,000 people that I was connected to on LinkedIn. All of these people I don't know personally. That's why I'm seeing a couple of faces. I'm like, I think we're connected and we better say hello. But on average, that group are people I have met either once or through a connection or found something, read something about them and decided to connect. Out of that 2,000, maybe less than 200 are close ties. These are people I can call anytime, ask for anything. They know me professionally. They have either worked with me very closely or recommended me and so on and so forth, or watched me as a client. And then there is the very small proportion, about 30 people. Those are the strongest bonds. They're almost like your intimate friends and family. You can call them absolutely anytime. They know what you're up to. So do you have a network that actually is diverse enough? Because guess what? If you're only investing time with people that you always hang out with, they're also always hanging out with you, they're not privy to information that's happening outside your network. They're not necessarily looking at life from a different perspective. So all the things that give you the multiple sources of power are diminished if you don't broaden and diversify your network. But what happens when we meet, I don't know how many people at a conference, and all you remember is you exchange cards? Have you exchanged cards in the last 24 hours at HRPA? Yeah, so what are you going to do with that? The golden relationship is you follow up. You follow up immediately, but then you create a consistent pattern of follow-up. So researchers at Notre Dame, what they did is a research with 8 million phone calls between 2 million people. And they found that the best, most productive and deep relationships require that you keep in touch every 2 weeks. Do you think you're going to keep in touch every 2 weeks with people you meet at a conference? Most likely not. That's because we're talking about strong ties. But for network, you should have some periodic cycle, maybe once a year, maybe once in 6 months. So depending on the tiers of your network, do you have a systematic way? And if nothing else, my 2 favorite times that I connect with my network is at Thanksgiving and New Year's. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, so I make sure I do handwritten cards. People who've made very significant impact over the last year. And New Year is usually for everybody I am meaningfully connected with, which means not necessarily just strong ties, but also medium ties. And my very weak connections, they're part of my newsletter or anything that I post on social media. If they post, I will respond, but we're not connected in person individually. Do you have some way of staying in touch and staying relevant? Because all the noise that is happening with social media, the people that actually are top of mind are those that actually are doing something or taking the initiative to stay top of mind. And you know what? Even if you felt, oh, that's really a thing for extroverts, people who don't know me really well find it very surprising. I'm an introvert. I will go to a networking event and spend the entire evening with one person, whoever I actually genuinely click with. And yes, a lot of networking gurus may think, okay, that's a waste of an event. But I usually have a much more meaningful connection that I can take back in 6 months. So you don't have to go beyond what you feel comfortable doing, but what is within your realm. And what if you didn't want to network at all? Start with people you really already know. Have you watched the TED Talk by Sean Achor? He is a psychologist from Harvard. His research showed people who are not willing to invest in relationship building with their peers at work are also least probable to get promoted at work. Our ability to build connections is perceived as a sign of competence. And you know why that would be? Because you can be an expert HR person today, but if you want to lead the organization or lead the team, they want to know that you can actually have and build relationships with people. Anybody in a leadership capacity does not necessarily have to be an expert. They have to be an expert at getting work done through people. So your demonstrated relationships are a demonstration of your leadership capability. So having a network that you can draw upon, because there will never be everything you know. Maybe you are the only HR person in your organization. Maybe you are the only OD consultant. Maybe you are one of the 5 talent acquisition specialists. But then your organization has a situation that is very peculiar, and nobody's really clear. It's quite gray. What should we do? If you have a network that is solid enough outside of your organization, you can actually do a private call out to see if other people have been in a similar situation. What was the best course of action? And the benefit is, A, this becomes a way for us to connect. And were you guys there in Adam Grant's keynote yesterday? Remember what he said about the CEO study, about the single easiest way to build trust with leadership? Ask for help. We put people on a pedestal when we ask for help. And sometimes help doesn't have to be help, it's feedback. Asking somebody for feedback on your work or a problem is giving them power, and we actually like feeling respected and valued. So asking for help is an amazing way to leverage your network. A, you're crowdsourcing solutions to your deepest problems. You also then appear to be the smartest person in the room when you are able to say, I learned X, Y, Z from other people, real experiences. And also you're demonstrating humility. I did not realize the courage it takes to ask for help until I became an entrepreneur. When I decided I'm going to leave the position of a director, everything was quite cozy and sweet. I made the decision without having a single project lined up. Nothing. And in 2 years, I am happy to share that I was able to build even bigger, if we just talk financial numbers, success as compared to my last position, and all because of my network. People rise up to help you. I think everybody finds amazing joy in being able to make a better difference in somebody's lives. You would love it if somebody solicited your help. Imagine you are giving somebody the same privilege when you ask them for help. Introduction to somebody that is really wonderful. So if you feel, where do I start? There is, well, I'm going to call him a blogger because that's how I know him. His name is Eric Barker. Really interesting guy, funny, amazing writing. He published a book recently called Barking Up the Wrong Tree. He says if networking is something that you wanted to leverage, ask your super connectors. So he cites research about Facebook. Think about all the people you're connected with on Facebook. Are there a small group of people that actually led to all the other connections? Typically, in both our professional and personal networks, there are a few people that actually are the source of all the other relationships. I only joined Facebook a year ago. I was avoiding social media before I became an entrepreneur, except LinkedIn. And I have a friend, Sarah. She is responsible, when I read this study, she is responsible for over 80% of my connections out of 300 something on Facebook. And I realized I constantly lean on her to make the introductions. So you don't have to go completely outside your comfort zone. What is that one goal you have for your career or for your current job? And ask this one person who seems to be really, really a great super connector. Say, this is my goal. Is there someone you recommend I can connect with? And that makes a huge difference because now you're not just wasting, and I know it sounds terrible, but as an introvert, if I have to go to 10 coffees and there was no connection, I do feel depleted. So I love it when a connection actually knows me well enough and is able to recommend somebody that I would connect with. So if you were in the same boat as I, using super connectors can be a great gift. So both ask for help from your network, but also ask for help from your leaders, the people that you want to partner with. Those that probably are doing performance management, what is the number one thing we start with? Clarify expectations. Have you actually had a conversation with your partners or leaders where you have asked them how would they like information to be communicated to them? How often? How much? In which format? Something as small as that makes such a big difference that you care to deliver the best quality outcome for me that actually I can use. So asking them for initial clarification puts you in a good position so that you're not doing rework. At the same time, if you are stuck, rather than going down a rabbit hole, sharing that with the leader may provide more insight. Plus, you build trust. Because Brene Brown did say vulnerability leads to trust. The easiest path. So reliability and resourcefulness are going to be your two strong tools in making sure that you actually become able to use the power that you've accumulated by using multiple sources of power. Any questions about that? So how many people know Pat Flynn? Yes, the entrepreneur in the room, of course, knows. So if you have ever tried a side business or whatever, you know this guy. He started this website called Smart Passive Income. So in 2008, when the recession hit, he actually was laid off from his position in an architecture firm. And of course, things were dire because he was supposed to get married in a few months. And with no income, he was trying to figure out what to do next. And just, you know how we do some side projects sometimes? He had created an ebook to help people, just for free, anybody who wanted to do an exam for how to be the leadership in energy and environmental design. So this is for people who are in construction and making eco-friendly buildings. He realized when he had nothing else going on that the biggest resource that is working well for him is this side project. So he decided to put it all together and figure out if he can make money online. Has anybody come across those really sleazy, slimy commercials of you can make $1,000 in a week? You know, if you click here, you will get a solution that will change your life forever. Yes, so he found a lot of that. He decided he's going to be different. He packaged all the free stuff he had shared, created a book, and said, I will share my knowledge for free with absolutely anybody. People who had used his free stuff still purchased the book that he created and continued to consume and advise other people who were looking for the exam. He became such a sensation that with transparency, his goal, his mantra, is to make sure he serves his network. That's his purpose in life. What is your purpose with your network? Because we usually think, what can the other person do for me? I'm taking the other person for coffee, lunch, we're having this conversation, what can you do for me? If you flip the narrative, what can you do for them? The reciprocity principle shows that sooner or later, they are going to do something amazing for you. And even if they never do something for you, the greatest skill set, so why educators love to teach, is because you learn so much more by teaching as compared to just sitting and consuming information. So can you find somebody to teach? He is at a point where he makes over $100,000 per month. Actually, he surpassed $250,000 last March. And all because he decided to contribute to his network. Yes, can we all be Pat Flynn? No, I'm trying, but there are ways to go. But what I have learned is if I approach every single interaction from what can I do for you, oh, the conversation's so much richer. And the relationship is better. And I think what has come as a benefit as an entrepreneur, years of cultivating the relationships as an entrepreneur, those were the people that gave me my first gigs. When I had no record, my organization had never done any business on its own. The resourcefulness you can find in your network, but resourcefulness you also find within you. So when I decided to go out on my own, I thought, okay, so as an organizational psychology practitioner, the world is my oyster, where do I start? And there was a change management framework I had created to teach leaders at every single level about how to manage change. And I had been teaching that as executive MBA programs, other schools, hospitals. I'm like, okay, so there is a product I have that works. Can I expand on that? So maybe there are things you're doing that you're not looking at as really value-add differentiators. Things or products you may have created at work. Something that you got amazing feedback for. Something that you did just for fun. Figuring out, are there expert sources in your life that you can actually springboard from? Springboard to help your network. Springboard to establish yourself as a credible expert of something. And if ever you decide a different route for yourself, where you wanted to work for yourself, then that becomes an enabler. So the power that comes from being reliable and resourceful goes beyond success within your current role. You actually become sought out in every role. Because no matter, at least in industries, it's pretty cozy. We know who's working where usually, if you're informed or staying informed. And that adds value because you build a reputation that serves you well. So the last piece I want to talk about is being an organizational system thinker. What are we talking about here? This is the area that typically is associated with strategy. This is the comment we normally hear. HR professionals absolutely should develop a greater, deeper business acumen. They should understand and implement strategic alignment. And lastly, they should really cultivate and use systems thinking in their work. So when we talk about business acumen, what are we referring to? Do you understand how your organization makes money? Do you understand the process from the very beginning of creating value to delivering value to your customers and then to capturing value through the process? Most of us don't. I didn't until I actually got involved in teaching HR strategy at Brock. And that led me to think and ask different questions and connect with people in the organization that I never had reached out to before. And it was a game changer. I think I got so I was in a senior consultant position and skipped over to become a director. And I think this had a lot to do with it. Because all of a sudden, when I worked with senior leaders, I was speaking their language. I now understood where within the HR spectrum the issue was directly related to what they're doing. So instead of positioning it as an HR initiative, I'm able to frame it from a business perspective. And I know, is it our responsibility? Shouldn't everybody be informed? Leaders should also be informed about the HR processes and value. After all, I don't know a single organizational strategy that does not say people are our competitive advantage. And we invest in our people. Yes, but if we go back to the proactive piece, if you can take the initiative to educate yourself, and how you do that is definitely by reading, learning on your own, so self-improvement, asking questions, connecting with people that are actually doing the work. Look out for, if you do have a strategy department in your organization, reach out to them. Say, before that, please do read the organizational strategic plan. Okay? So before you ask questions or ask somebody that you can shadow them, do your due diligence, because otherwise it may feel a bit of an annoyance that you haven't done your homework. So when I was applying for the director position, I read the last 5 years of organizational reports because I wanted to identify trends in this organization so that I can anticipate what may happen, what are the hurdles. What are you doing to differentiate and understand the core business? So how you build business acumen besides the self-learning piece is shadowing. Shadow, I don't know if your organization formally does that, but it is a great way to cross-train, and usually cross-training takes much more, but shadowing gives you enough perspective and empathy so that you have a much more responsive culture. And I understand how to make requests, and what questions to ask, and what language to use. And that is hugely powerful. The second piece is about strategic alignment. So again, I can't emphasize this enough. Mastering your strategic plan. You should know from the very first page of what is the compelling case, what are the threats, what are the opportunities. So every business case, every strategic plan document usually includes the work that consultants have done in scanning the environment. Now you're getting industry insights about what's relevant. Where are we trying to go? You know what strategy really is? It's actually a decision-making tool. It's supposed to tell you what are you not supposed to do. So HR, with all the things and initiatives that are coming down the pipeline, can you become the person that actually says, how is this advancing the organizational strategy? And if it's not advancing the organizational strategy, can you articulate and flag that as a risk? Leaders, because we have very short time that we actually get face to face, are, if you have noticed, the 2 questions about what and then the risk. What are we going to get out of it, the outcome, and what is the risk in how this is being approached if this doesn't get done, if it gets done, because that's leader's job, at least the senior leadership. So can you identify what those risks would be? Secondly, when you're working on any HR initiative and you're trying to announce it either up or down or laterally, make sure that you constantly articulate which business line does it align with? Which strategic priority is it advancing? I was a little dismayed to see yesterday when Brene Brown asked in the group how many people can articulate the behaviors of their organizational values. Do you remember how less than a handful could? Can you be that person who actually knows what the organizational values are? And I know it sounds silly, but the difference is then you become the person that actually demonstrates that I am absolutely engaged. I not only believe in the mission of where we want to go, I am going to make sure that as an HR person, I'm role modeling how we will get there. That is the values piece. These are differentiating pieces. These are very simple. That's another thing about most of this is absolutely common sense, but the difference is it takes discipline over a long time. And what I'm asking you to do is pull the threads. You've already done parts of this. Which would be the greatest leverage for you that actually will advance and bring it all together? It's the thoughtfulness of positioning yourself as such. For the systems thinking piece, let me actually first read you this quote. It's by Russell Ackoff, and he says, managers are not confronted with problems that are independent of each other, but with dynamic situations that consist of complex systems of changing problems that interact with each other. I call such situations messes. Managers do not solve problems, they manage messes. And guess who is with them as a strategic business partner? You, me. We are responsible to manage the mess. And you know how we do a very good job of that? Is if we can see the mess not as an event, but as part of the bigger whole. Systems thinking is all about using a bird's eye view, pulling yourself out of the context to see, okay, so we have a problem. What is any other aspect that's related to this problem? Can you articulate all the interrelated issues such that you pull one string, it's going to have an impact on the rest of them? Then, usually the leader has an idea of how they want to solve it. When you think about the solutions, can you articulate the unintended consequences of that solution? So yes, of course, you think that a certain discipline or a certain initiative will solve a problem. What are all the possible negatives that may happen? Those are the unintended consequences of system thinking. So, and the greatest gift that you can offer is when you can offer a different perspective. But by that time, you should be valued enough with other things that we've talked about so that your perspective is heard. Do all of you have a pen or a pencil? Let's do a quick exercise. If you don't have any, use your finger. But watch me carefully. So what we're doing is we're putting the pen up, and I'm going to look up, and I'm going to draw a circle clockwise and keep looking at it. Is everybody with me? You can just do it right now. Okay? Clockwise. Then I'm going to keep this motion steady and bring it down to my eye level. Still drawing the circle, and then I bring it down, and now I look at it. Which direction is the circle moving? Counterclockwise. I know. The first time I did it, I'm like, this is magic. And a few times, if you didn't get it right, the strategy is you draw it. You draw it, and you're not moving this back and forth. You keep that steady. By the time you come down, it's counterclockwise. You know what has shifted? Your vantage points. How do you shift someone's perspective? You shift the perspective by either making a shift physically. So let's say you are having a dead-end conversation with a certain partner or a leader. Change the context. Don't meet in their office. You know, power is also held in spaces. Ask them to go for a walk. Ask them to meet in the coffee shop. You change the power dynamics, all of a sudden the way that same information is received changes. Similarly, when you're having the discussion, instead of beating down the same rationale that you've tried 4 times, try a different approach. That is the value of changing the vantage point. And even greater value comes from finding out what is the leverage. So if there are 10 things we could do to fix the problem, which is the one that is going to be least disruptive, least money, of course, which leader doesn't want to spend more money, and going to have the greatest impact? So now your recommendations are such that they are offering leverage over other solutions. And usually leverage comes from understanding the system, because then you can find solutions within your organization rather than creating something new. So system thinking can be a huge gift in making sure that you are perceived, and people seek you out because, you know what, leaders have tons of problems to deal with. If you can reduce one, that is a gift. So before you can implement these 3 sets of behaviors, do a check, a mental check. And I used to think this is such fluff, but as an entrepreneur, I swear to you, this is such a game changer. We have our own assumptions and beliefs that hold us back. My biggest assumption and belief was around money. And I didn't realize, and asking for help. And it has been mind-boggling to realize that we have assumptions about absolutely every expectation in our life. Do you actually, what is the self-talk in your head right now? Yeah, this sounds good in theory, but I'm not sure this is going to work for me. Or this sounds good, I have tried it, I have been successful, but not at this organization. Whatever the narrative is, if there is a narrative that is going to disallow you from actually sincerely practicing one or more of these strategies, do a serious check. And if you think this is a little outside of my reach, I wanted to share what it means to develop outside. Very powerful. Have you read the book, Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's by an economist named Herman Ibarra. She is from London School of Economics. And she is right on money because a lot of research has now changed, where initially we thought introspection and reflection is what leads to better performance, both of you as a person and the organization. But now we're watching that if you really wanted something different, if you actually wanted to challenge and change your mindset, you have to act first in that role so that you can break the patterns that you have developed so that you can become the person you want to become. Sounds counterintuitive. So if we go back to the networking example and you say, I don't have time to network. I don't have time to reach out to one new person every month. Or I don't have time to follow up or thank somebody. You know, I loved it when Brene said, joy is the greatest vulnerability and gratitude is the greatest antidote. Research has shown we love to spend time with people that actually show they're thankful for this relationship, for what we bring to them. Are you demonstrating gratitude to your relationships? So outside is actually acting the way you want your outcome to be. So so usually we say, only if I had time. So outside would mean, I'm going to put it in my calendar. I am going to do that one phone call every month for only 5 minutes. And if it goes over time, I would have to say to this person, I'm so sorry, but I only dedicated 5 minutes for this. Can we schedule it next month? And over time, you do that 10 times, you start thinking of yourself in a very different light of who you are as somebody who builds a relationship, invests in relationships. And if you feel, oh, this is going to take a very long time, and yes, it does take a very long time. I can't promise you exactly how long it will take before you start seeing results, but if you ever felt discouraged, there's another book recommendation I have for you. Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. Cal Newport, you may have heard about his deep work, which is all about we need to focus in this world of distraction. So his first book, which was Be So Good They Can't Ignore You, he said if we can develop a craftsman mindset where the goal for us as a professional is how can we serve others, how can we make other people's lives better, as compared to what can other people do for me, and dedicating to trying new skills just because it'll make you a better professional, not focusing on the outcome that you so want in return, that the probability of your success will be so much greater. And I will close with the example he shares about Steve Martin, the comedian, actor. Steve was 20-year-old when he decided he really wanted to change the shape of comedy. He thought it was too slapstick. It was the traditional, you have the punches and the probes, and he wanted to do something different. And Steve basically got started on his own and reportedly said, in his own words, that it took him over 10 years for the audience to even acknowledge that he was doing something different and of value. So what looked like overnight success was over 10 years of perseverance. And he said 10 years, how did I continue to persevere? Is because I was working with, he didn't use the words craftsman mindset, but he said my job was to become the best at what I do. And I was going to be so good that the world would not be able to ignore me. And the reason it's powerful is because that's all that's within our control. You can't dictate how the other person will reciprocate. Do you think these strategies work with absolutely every leader? No. No. They work with a large majority. They have served many, many people, especially me, very well. But I will be failing you if I said it works with absolutely everybody. No, it doesn't. But what it does do is give you a framework to work with, at least with those that are reasonable, that you can cultivate joy with, and actually add value, so that these people start seeking you out as the pro that you are, not just in your job, but somebody who understands a business and situates HR within the greater context. So just to wrap up, I wanted to summarize the entire framework, that in order, in my opinion, in order to become a sought-out, trusted strategic advisor, you want to focus on 3 categories of actions: becoming a powerful problem solver who uses and cultivates multiple sources of power, who uses strategies that are relevant to the context to influence the stakeholders, and lastly, who proactively identifies problems and patterns so that you are proposing solutions that are relevant and anticipate the problems, not just those that are occurring today, but that may come up in the future. You are also somebody that consistently delivers quality stuff so that you are treated as reliable, and reliability is a condition for trust. And you are resourceful, that when you don't know what should be done, because many, many, many times we won't, you will ask for help, you will ask for clarification. And you will have a network that is that has strong ties, medium ties, and weak ties. And lastly, you are going to be an organizational system thinker, where you have a bird's eye view, such that you understand the business. You understand how your initiatives are aligned to the strategy, advancing it or not. And lastly, you make sure that you are helping your leaders see things differently. You are giving them perspective, a different vantage point. And I'm hopeful that you apply all of those things, that there should be a shift sooner than later. And if you have comments, something is working, not working, absolutely share it with me. My contact information is here. If you have any ideas, thoughts, questions, as I said, I'm with Pat on this. I am passionate and committed to contributing value to my network. So I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And if you have any questions, I will take them now, or I will stay back and answer your questions. Thank you, everyone, for your time. And we're good. Have a great day and a great rest of the conference.